So, apparently IS didn't learn from their mistakes, and neither did I. Hi, my name's Eldervi, and I'll once more be the guy to ruin Aether raids for everyone. Yay! With the addition of a sparkable Nott on tomorrow's banner, Dark Defenses will indeed become a very dark place for every player who didn't open up their wallets on Valentine's Day. Since the addition of Daga, Nott's sister with the better taste. I mean, what could be worse than being into Odor? We've been introduced to the new Pathfinder ability, making it possible for units to pass those ladies without using up their movement. The effect Daga provided to offensive plays was rather manageable. As a Daga player from day one, I can barely name you a handful of matches where Pathfinder made a difference in order to win a game. This is mainly because Daga has to waste her turn entering the danger area in order to make it work. Pathfinder on defense maps is totally different though. In some situations. Merely some hours after Daga was summonable, I saw people pointing out the power of Pathfinder on their defenses, throwing away their potential lift loss reduction by running Cavlines with 2 Daga. At this point I already knew. We should kiss Nott's feet. Because if she ever ends up on the opposing side of her sister, it will end bad. For all of us. To be fair, IS had time to adjust this. People found out about the Pathfinder possibilities on day 1 of Daga. If IS had cared at least a bit about balancing, they could have changed things. Even in case they didn't want to take Nott off this midpoint banner. They could have simply adjusted the story in a way that makes Nott wield a different kind of legendary weapon with another effect in order to maybe beat up that prick Odor. They didn't. So I'm only taking half the blame for this video. In the upcoming minutes I will present you 3 theory crafts of defense maps that we already had, but I'll make them worse with Nott's Pathfinder ability. So let's start right off the bat with the map I was talking about earlier. The setup the user known as SeaDolphin13 on Reddit came up with on the first day we got Daga. I merely adjusted their idea with the now available extra slot. The base to this is obviously our formerly known Cavline, and the idea is simple yet genius. 2 copies of Nott in the middle of the map will serve as mythic fillers for a regular Cavline the way we know and hate it, but with a little bit of extra flavor. The obvious first thing to notice is that the ranged Cavs in the backline will be able to pass through the Nott standing in front of them to target the bottom row as usual. That's the general effect Nott provides. Cavs and mages can be positioned rather safely in the backline while still reaching the same tiles as on the front line. A single Nott can already make this possible. At the same time though, the Cavs to Nott's left and right will also be able to move through their tile, reaching that very same bottom row spot. Unlike in prior Cavlines, which you could win with a well-built team by simply positioning units to have favorable matchups, this will now suddenly become much harder. Fallen Leon may still deal very well with that Veronica, but Liv reaching him at the same time won't be as funny. And this is still the effect of only 1 Nott. Most of you will have already grasped the concept. Even more dangerous is bringing 2 Nott to the center, as they will make those 2 bottom row tiles targetable by any of the 4 Cavs you may run alongside them. A tile getting threatened by 4 units of 4 possible colors is hardly protectable, probably not even with far safe units. At the same time, it is also hard to stay out of these tiles, seeing that the setup leaves you only with 8 otherwise available spots. 2 of them will additionally be targeted by the borderline Cavs. It's called borderline, right? As they're standing on that border line. Whatever. It's not wrong either way. 1 tile will still be taken away by the bonus structure, leaving you with merely 5 safe tiles to stay out of everyone's range in turn 1. Unless of course it's a rally dancer trap on top. By putting either of the borderline Cavs in the 7th slot, a dancing Sigurd can make sure that even that last safe tile will get threatened and therefore make the whole team start moving in turn 1. Assuming the offender isn't running only 5 units in 3 buildings, which fairly told almost no one does who has the option to have more units, you can even spare yourself from the effort of putting in that dancer trap. A flash Cav healer in the 7th spot can be targeted by an additional dancer. This can either be duo puny providing further buffs, or also literally any other dancer besides Triandra, because 3 mythics on the same defense is a no-no. Sorry for everyone, me included, who has highly merged dark mythics. Going without the dancer trap can actually be even more devastating for the offender, as it opens up duo Sigurd to actually dance. If you didn't bring an NCD user because you're running safes instead, you may very likely find yourself in a position where you can't take out these enemy horses. And with the increased movement from Pathfinder, there's almost no tile Sigurd can't reach in order to give one of these Cavs yet another action. The two Nott round up the setup by pretty much doing nothing, except maybe running reposition, in order to get those fragile Cavs out of the enemy's range before you enter round 2 with whatever is left after that encounter. So, how do you deal against that? Fairly told, I have no clue. Maybe we've reached the age of double fast saves on offense. A fully blocked bottom row stops lynchers the same way as Gale Forcers, cause even if you make your way up to these units, I don't see how you successfully take out 6 units while not leaving a single dancer in the devastating range of that last standing unit. Assuming you even find enough actions to take out 6 units after having to use up at least 2 actions for crushing a building and smiting your unit in. It is a dangerous setup. And as long as your Cavs have enough firepower and survivability through stuff like AR defense skills, wind sweep or flash, you may even tweak this map further. For example by getting rid of any dancer. You may just switch Sigurd for another high damage horse like a Thunderhead Olwen, and the super meanies among you may simply put a fallen Edelgard in the extra slot and put her away into the corner, to make your enemies weep while going through their offensive choices to see if they have anything that can take care of the horses and fallen Edelgard. You may also put one of the Notts in the extra slot and just slam that leftover bonus defensive mythic with Wings of Mercy on the map, hoping for that one surprise kill, or at least live loss reduction against sacrifice players. There are some options. Still, this isn't a 100% guaranteed victory defense. There are indeed some flaws which are hard to work around. As you can see, Selena ends up out of Veronica's protective odd recovery range. A tactic room in her lane or a well positioned Loki may shut her down. You would need to bait Dancer Sigurd in one way or another though, otherwise he'll simply end up refreshing her. Unless you're actually that one lunatic with enough space to make it into round 2, then you could probably isolate Sigurd and maybe even win against the map with the right tank. But let's be real, that blocked bottom row makes it very difficult to take out your enemies even after defending yourself for one turn. And just because you survive once, doesn't mean you'll also make it through a second time, when the enemy is much closer but still hard to reach. Another way may be to just omni-tank everything. With 2 good tanks of different colors, you may bait the 2 borderline Cavs and only need to make sure that the one Cav in the top row who'll get danced won't take out any of your units as revenge. I can see that working even without far save. I think in this current layout, my team of Micaiah and Leon would be able to survive this map by tanking Selena and Liv. There are obviously also adjustments to this. I've seen people actually blocking the paths of those 2 borderline Cavs in order to make sure they are not baited on their own. But with the additional provided space, you may open up the map to all kind of strategies. Maybe you block only one of the roads, making at least duo tanking unavailable. But people with either 6 units in 3 buildings or 5 units in 4 buildings will still avoid the turn 1 trap, gaining the option of weakening the team to tank in round 2. So let's go to the second map. For this I want to take a look at the now possible turn 1 Dancer trap on Dark Season. Most of you are probably aware of it by now. Dancer Sigurd is a necessity for this, because, let's say it straight away, every Dancer trap without Dancer Sigurd is inferior. He moves down to dance the extra slot unit, his increased threat range makes someone rally him, that unit gets danced and suddenly attacks you with a much bigger range than it previously had. I thought a lot about this setup, because frankly told, Pathfinder doesn't make a huge difference when you get your units to the front anyways. So I've come up with this kinda mixed defense, which may indeed knock 1 or 2 saveable users off their feet by surprise. The biggest counter against these forced turn 1 traps, no matter if they are forced through the Dancer trap or also stuff like the return trap with Winter Burnie, is actually baiting the enemies right in turn 1. Without Dancer Sigurd I never used these Dancer traps myself, but as I've recently learned, rallying a unit that has already ended its turn is considered a post-combat action. Therefore, baiting enemies already in turn 1 will often crush the rally trap, possibly leaving the team in a very strange place. Odd recovery is still indispensable, especially in light season, where most people are running Miller by now. That's why I put OG Zephyrian in place of Veronica. He can provide for a bit more safety against Linja clears or also Gale Force threats, while he most importantly probably won't end up getting baited. But you can of course also run your usual Cav healers. Then I've put the defensive far-safe Edelgard, who can be someone else as well, in the extra slot. Assuming the enemy didn't rush in round 1, the danger area looked probably rather manageable, and the map layout does indeed invite you to wait for a possible turn 3 bolt tower strike in order to weaken those armors. Sigurd will move down with the right slot order and refresh Edelgard. Considering his now increased range makes it rather difficult to stay safe, and I mean rather difficult, but not impossible in this setup, which leaves 7 tiles at maximum unthreatened. If one of your enemies carelessly stepped into the trap though, this seemingly innocent setup will go off. With the right slot order again, you can then make Nott move down to rally Sigurd from the right side. So far, so nothing changed. Triandra is not in range to dance Nott, therefore she can't refresh her. Selena also runs a rally, but her tile is now occupied by Nott. Entry Pathfinder. With the additional Pathfinder movement, Selena or any other carry Cav can go all the way down right below Sigurd and rally him from there. This makes her also end up in Triandra's range, who will dance her, and from this position the whole map is open for her to attack. I did pick this winter map on purpose, as the tile left of Sigurd, which could also be reached by her, is unavailable due to the tree standing there. Triandra on the other hand has no issue trespassing the tree in order to dance. From there, a bridal Katria empowered ×4 desperately attacking Selena might indeed even knock out a precious far safe unit. In theory at least. Fawn Leon might just accept the 0×4 and send that bitch back into the river. You can obviously use any Cav instead of Selena. You can also use anyone instead of Katria. The nice thing about her is obviously the Desperation Brave effect, which she generously provides, but there is room for any other flyer. Maybe you want to make use of your duo by Lef again, or you might even try an Odd Tempest Dive Bomb Gale Forcing Chill. That could be fun as well. In case you're not running Katria though, you will need either Guidance on your flyer or Odd Tempest or Nott. I was initially planning this map with Eliwood in her place, going for that common T setup, but the trees in the bottom row block him from gaining an advantage from Nott's Pathfinder. I tried to include her in my older IP team, seeing if I could make it work again with the addition of Nott, but infantry teams were likely working with stuff like ground orders anyways. Therefore, her Pathfinder isn't a big gain. Armor ball teams have much better stuff to do than to move, so no gain for them. And in their setup she'll likely be weaponless anyways. And flyer balls? Does anyone still run flyer balls? Pathfinder has once again the biggest impact with Cavline themed defenses, as turn 1 initiations are just the strongest type of defensive gameplay right now. Therefore, let's take a look at the last map, which is my personal favorite. It combines ideas from the 2 maps before and enables an interesting playstyle. Surely not without flaws, but which map is without flaws anyways? You see, I'm once more using similar units as in the Cavline setup, but different positionings. Instead of running Nott twice in the second row, I have one of them in the back line. Otherwise, it's a mostly closed Cav setup. Selena and Liv targeted one single tile as before, while Veronica and my freshly added Thunderhead Olwen threaten the 2 center tiles. So far nothing changed. Instead of both center tiles, only one tile is threatened this time by the 3 cavs surrounding the second row Nott. So, how is this different from the issues map 1 had? You may notice that I'm suddenly running 3 mythics, and I'll tell you why any second. First of all, the unit in the extra slot will be second row Nott this time. Instead of a Dancer Trap Sigurd setup, which we know can be fucked up by baiting out the cavs right in turn 1, we will instead go back to a good old regular rally trap. Cause the thing about the setup is, I want people to bait my cavs into seemingly favorable matchups. Especially Selena and Liv are very attractive to be taken out by well-known cav counters like Micaiah, Leon, Guinevere and many more. So I'm not even trying to increase my range with a cav dancer like Sigurd. I want the enemy to take on my units confidently right in round 1. With the 4 center tiles occupied, I have as before the situation of leaving only 6 tiles open, and one of these has to be filled with the bonus structure, so making it into round 2 without combat is once again fairly difficult, unless 5 units and 3 buildings become the new meta, which I don't expect. It would be the fastest way to make IS address these issues though, when no one summons for those new extra slot mythics anymore. Just saying. Therefore, people will likely choose wise matchups like putting Leon against Selena and Guinevere against Liv. So, what makes things different from the map I've shown you first? To be fair, it does require a premium skill to work, which is a Rally Up plus, but different from many setups I've shown you before, this one doesn't need dual Sigurd, so it's a big yay for people like me, knowing that they won't have to suffer through both seasons. Aurelia Plus is by the way currently available on Pent on the bridal banner. And yes, I agree, IS should give me money for that shit advertising. That Aurelia Plus is, same as regular rallies, a pre-combat skill and will therefore always happen before combat. The good thing about rally ups is that they don't have to hit the unit going into combat, but any unit as long as you fulfill the conditions. Therefore, will not just rally anyone. With the second row Nott in the extra slot, you can make the AI rally this Nott. The Rally Up Plus AI decision making is really fucked up in some ways, but for this setup there are 3 rules which must be fulfilled. First, the second row Nott has to be the 7th slot. Second, the Rally Up Plus Nott has to reach the other Nott. This is fairly easy to be honest. She can reach the tile without guidance or ground order simply by moving through 7th slot Nott's Pathfinder. Third, there must be at least one of your cavs without the buff of your rally up being baited by the enemy. So, for example, if you're running a Rally Up Plus attack like me, and the enemy baits only Veronica, she can't have buffs to her attack by Hone Cavs or something like that. Otherwise, the Rally Up Plus will only happen after combat, ruining the strategy. If you fulfill all of these rules, Nott will move below the other Nott and rally her, resulting in all the cavs also receiving that rally. And we'll take +6 attack to our odd recovery clean washed cavs any day. I'll run Triandra in this setup as you need 2 mythics in your main team, providing your cavs additionally with more HP and speed, also good to have. With the help of guidance, she can move across the board below your healer and refresh the Nott, which will result in all the enemies in these 2 rows getting debuffed and affected by her Dance's Guard, which is especially helpful against armor units running special fighter type skills or effects like Backdoor and Fallen Edelgard. The really interesting part though is the shifting danger area. It doesn't make a huge difference for poor Selena, she will sadly still die against her unfavorable matchup, but the other 3 cavs will suddenly reach 4 tiles deep into the bottom row, making it very difficult for offenders to protect all of their units, especially when 3 cavs of different colors team up against one poor leftover mythic. And even Guinevere might need to address her shaky legs when instead of poor Whale Boy Liv, a Flash Veronica and Blade Tome Olwen come to speak to her. Without a lucky setup in which the bonus structure stands in exactly the targeted bottom row tile, which it may to be fair, it is very likely that at least one unit will end up in one of these threesome tiles. And I also wish any far safe tank good luck in surviving this brute power. Maybe some will, I don't know. As you might have also anticipated, this works really well with Legendary Sigurd. By having Legendary Sigurd in place of Ulvin, for example, he may run all the way down to the bottom row in a straight line, and if he manages to hit someone, he can even release Selena from her unfavorable matchup that threatens every tile but 2 without even exposing your team in turn 1. Isn't that fun? So, what's the answer to that? Again, only save balls and not even those if they are not well executed? A tactic room or Loki standing in Veronica's lane could actually shut her down and take out the flash user, which might be quite pleasant. But it also implies that you may be running a building in one of your merely 5 otherwise safe tiles. So goodbye to another unit. There are further ways to tweak this setup, for example running a far safe tank as well instead of one of the horses, making Gale Force plays harder again. But as the map is mostly closed up, Gale Force strategies will have a harder time anyways, and you can always easily put something stupid like a standstill on your 7th slot Nott, who isn't doing that much anyways. I've also seen some amazing clears of Vantage Sweepers and Mage tanks against my Sigurd map, but they had to take out Sigurd and left Mirabilis alive to tank her. And those 2 Notts will make that much harder with their offensive stat line and mana skill buffing them up compared to tanking a half asleep Drug Fairy. I think it might also once again be possible to Lindforce this with some skill and good positioning, but you could of course run a second dual cuff like Summer Mia to make things more difficult. God help us all if they ever release a dual cuff healer. And again, I do think Nott will hit much harder than someone like Mirabilis, so even if you Lindforce your way through the map, you'll have to make a very careful decision in terms of who you'll keep alive to get the pots. The cuffs in the setup are easily exchangeable as long as the odd recovery cuff healer stays in that place. A mix of different colors and maybe also a mix of physical and magical damage is of course better to address as many tanks as possible. There will still be those highly merged and invested tanks who just don't give a fuck no matter what you do, but I've learned to accept these. Even Triandra is to some degree exchangeable. You could for example always use the current leftover bonus defensive mythic in her place. Cause, truth be told, it is not like that refreshed Nott will carry you to victory. With Wings of Mercy, they may even hop in and do something funny and unexpected, just to be not as irrelevant. That being said, I will probably try to build that third map myself, depending on my summoning result or Nott's banner. And anyone who has seen my Ashera summoning knows that I'll have to do it without Triandra. But, well, some things can't be helped. I sincerely do hope though that IS will address this current meta situation very soon. Because, truth be told, I am sick of yet another edition forcing players into Cavlines versus save balls. I wish all of you luck on the most toxic season ever starting tomorrow. Because, don't forget, those lovely people over at the IS headquarters even made it a win season. Have fun and see ya all back in tier 23.